All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep, deep into the world of Donald Trump.
Deep, deep, deep.
We're going to try to go way beyond just the headlines and, all the tweets.
Right.
To really try to figure out, what makes this guy tick,
Yeah.
how he built his empire, what drives him,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even learn something from all of his successes and
failures.
and his pretty spectacular failures, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what's so interesting about this deep dive is
Yeah.
we're not just limiting ourselves to, just his political career.
Right.
We're going all the way back to his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Yeah.
do that, we're using as our guide this fantastic YouTube video
Yeah.
by Johnny Harris
Johnny Harris, yeah.
called The Real Story of Donald Trump.
It's a good one.
And this video is packed with so many interesting stories and insights.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking everything from
Yeah.
his childhood in Queens to his time at military school, his real estate ventures, his reality TV stardom, and then, of course, his wild ride in politics.
This is really an exploration of how this persona that we all know was built,
Yeah.
brick by brick over decades.
Over decades, yeah.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, let's start at the very beginning with Donald's childhood
Right.
in Queens, New York.
Okay.
His father, Fred Trump, was, as many people know, a very successful real estate developer.
Yep.
And it seems like he really instilled a pretty strong work ethic in Donald,
Yeah.
but also this
Relentless.
drive to win.
Oh, yeah.
So this video actually highlights this interesting anecdote
Oh, yeah.
about Donald and his father attending this opening
Okay.
of a major bridge in New York City.
Oh, wow.
And apparently what really struck young Donald wasn't the bridge itself,
Oh, okay.
but it was the fact that the actual architect who designed the bridge
Right.
was totally ignored during the celebration.
Like, wasn't even mentioned.
Like, not even mentioned.
Yeah.
It's kind of messed up, right?
Yeah, totally.
And Trump himself actually says that this was kind of a defining moment for him.
Oh, wow.
It made him realize that you have to fight for recognition,
Right.
that you can't just let people walk all over you. You really have to be the one in the spotlight.
Interesting.
So, do you think that that experience actually did shape his worldview? Or do you think it's just like a convenient story that he tells to kind of explain his behavior?
I mean, it's tough to say for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely fits with his lifelong pattern of
Right.
just needing to be at the center of attention,
Yeah.
and controlling the narrative.
Right, right.
But yeah, who knows? Who knows what's really going on in his head?
Yeah, who knows?
But it's a good story, at
It's
least.
a good story, yeah.
So then comes military school, right?
Yeah, so then he goes off to military school,
Mm-hmm.
and he seems to really thrive
Yeah.
in this very structured, kind of disciplined environment.
Yeah, it seems like, that kind of system really worked well for him.
And he really excelled in competition.
Yeah.
And he started to kind of develop his, let's say, his flair for showmanship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Even as a teenager,
Yeah.
his classmates, they remember him saying things like,
Yep.
I'm going to be famous someday.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't like I hope to be famous. It was like, I'm going to be famous.
Yeah, very confident. Yeah.
Wow.
There's this unwavering
Yeah.
self-belief that we see as like a recurring theme throughout his whole life.
It's interesting, though, because then his college years, they're a little bit more, we could say, complicated.
It's a little murkier.
Murky.
There's this whole controversy surrounding his draft deferments
Yeah.
during the Vietnam War.
So he received educational deferments initially,
Right.
but later he got a deferment for a bone spur in his heel.
Right.
And this is where it gets a little interesting. The doctors involved actually had connections to his father's business,
Oh, wow.
which raised some eyebrows at the time, for sure.
So you start to see this pattern emerge here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where instead of addressing this controversy head on,
Yeah,
he kind of evades and deflects.
dodges it.
Yeah. It's a tactic that he'll use time and time again throughout his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you wonder how much his family's wealth and influence really did kind of pave the way for him,
Yeah, for sure.
Did he really earn everything that he has, or
Yeah.
did he get a leg up because of his father's connections?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
That's a good question.
And one that we'll probably keep coming back to, for sure.
Yeah.
But for the sake of this deep dive, why don't we move on to his early career in real estate?
Okay, yeah, so he joins his father's business.
Right.
Right.
He kind of follows in his father's footsteps, at least initially.
But then things take this kind of dramatic turn. The Department of Justice files this lawsuit.
Oh, yeah.
Against them.
A huge, huge lawsuit.
And this lawsuit was serious.
Yeah.
They accused the Trump Organization of racial discrimination in their rental practices.
Yeah.
And there was, from what we've read, there was pretty substantial evidence to back up these claims.
Like, this wasn't just we think maybe you did this. This was like, we've got the goods on you.
And this is where we really see that never back down attitude come into play full force.
Full force, yeah.
So instead of settling, which many businesses probably would have done in that situation,
right,
Trump decides to countersue the Department of Justice.
Countersues the DOJ.
Yes.
That's a bold move.
For $100 million.
$100 million. Oh, my goodness.
It was a very bold move.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the judge dismissed it.
Okay.
But it just shows you, like, even with all this evidence stacked against him, he refuses to admit any wrongdoing. It takes years before he finally settles with the DOJ.
Okay.
And even then, there's this very crucial clause in the agreement.
What's that?
There is no admission of guilt.
Oh, so he's still never admitted to it.
Never admitted to it.
So this kind of sets the stage for how he handles accusations and scandals for his entire career.
It's a pattern.
It's like his MO.
Deny, deflect, attack.
Attack, yeah.
And often he actually manages to kind of escape any real consequences.
He seems to always slip out at the last second.
He does. He does.
It's fascinating to see that play out, over and over again.
But this whole thing with the DOJ, with this lawsuit, it seemed to really sour him on his father's type of real estate.
Oh, really?
He wanted something bigger, more glamorous, more
Trump, basically.
More Trump, yeah.
More in line with his personality.
Yeah. And so he sets his sights on Manhattan. Skyscrapers, the luxury, the prestige.
Right.
It was the perfect stage.
Yeah.
For Donald Trump to really kind of make his mark.
Okay, I see that.
His ambition just takes this massive leap, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough for him to just follow in his father's footsteps anymore.
I'd be like, I gotta do something completely different.
He wants to build his own empire.
His own thing.
And this empire, he wants it to just scream opulence and exclusivity.
Oh, yeah.
So this is really the beginning of this Trump that we know today.
And it's actually in the 1970s.
Yeah.
When New York City is facing some economic decline,
right,
that Trump kind of sees his big opportunity.
Yeah, he swoops in.
While other people are hesitant to invest, he comes in with this bold vision to revitalize the city.
Yeah.
And that leads to some of those iconic buildings in New York, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Grand Hyatt.
Grand Hyatt, yeah.
And, of course, Trump Tower.
Trump Tower.
His signature achievement.
That's his namesake, yeah.
These projects really cement his image as a builder of just these extravagant,
larger-than-life,
over-the-top spaces.
Totally.
But it's important to note here, right?
Yeah.
That his success in Manhattan wasn't just about, like, business smarts.
No, there was more to it.
He also benefited greatly from tax breaks and some pretty questionable financing practices.
Interesting.
And even outright lies to banks to secure loans.
So he's playing fast and loose with the rules a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
It's not just about building buildings.
Yeah, right.
It's about creating an image, creating a persona.
He's crafting this very, very carefully constructed image of himself as this self-made billionaire, like the embodiment of the American dream. But the reality, as we're starting to see, is a little bit more complicated.
Way more complicated.
Yeah, a little more nuanced.
And this is where he really starts to understand the power of the media.
Okay.
He develops this really interesting relationship with the New York City tabloids.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of become his playground.
What do you mean?
So he feeds them all these stories about his lavish lifestyle, his high-profile relationships, his flamboyant personality.
Got it.
And they, in turn, give him this constant attention.
Oh, yeah.
And he clearly craves.
He needs that attention.
Whether the coverage is positive or negative, he doesn't seem to really care.
It's all about the attention at the end of the day.
He seems to understand something that a lot of people miss, that people are drawn to spectacle.
Oh, yeah.
People are drawn to these larger-than-life figures.
Larger than life, yeah.
And often the truth kind of takes a backseat to a good story.
So he's not really afraid to play fast and loose with the facts.
Not at all.
Okay.
There's this crazy story about him using these fake names.
Fake names.
Like John Barron.
Oh, come on.
To plant rumors about himself in the tabloids.
He's calling up the tabloids, pretending to be someone else?
Yes.
Really?
Often to inflate his wealth and influence.
Wow, so that's all part of the game.
Did he ever admit to doing that?
He didn't, not publicly.
Okay.
But this is actually a pretty well-documented tactic.
It's wild.
One of the most famous examples is this incident with Forbes magazine.
Forbes, okay. Right.
When they were compiling their list of the wealthiest Americans.
Okay, yeah.
So Trump, posing as, you guessed it, John Barron.
No way.
Calls up a Forbes reporter.
Oh, my God.
And he claims to have intimate knowledge of Trump's finances.
Really?
And he proceeds to just greatly exaggerate his net worth.
So he's like making stuff up.
Making stuff up.
And Forbes just went with it.
They fell for it.
No.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Wow.
Forbes publishes their list, and based on this, fabricated information,
right,
Trump is ranked way higher than he actually should have been.
So he's basically like living in his own reality show where he can just make up the rules as he goes.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, he's not just building a business empire. He's building a brand. He's building this persona. And this carefully crafted image often just doesn't match the reality of his business dealings.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors, yeah.
And this fascination with perception over reality really becomes this defining characteristic of his career.
It's something we're going to see play out again and again as we continue the deep dive.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
But speaking of his career, get ready for a wild ride because his ambitions, they expand way beyond the world of just real estate.
Oh, I know. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah, we're talking.
Airlines, board games, casinos, beauty pageants.
He slaps his name on everything.
Slaps his name on everything.
It's the Trump brand.
Yeah.
It's got to be everywhere.
He even launches a vodka brand.
He does.
Despite being a teetotaler.
Wait, he doesn't even drink.
And that's where his business strategy gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He very rarely actually invests his own capital in these ventures.
Got it.
Instead, he licenses his name.
Oh, smart.
So he allows other people to use the Trump brand for a fee.
Oh, okay, I see.
So he's basically profiting from this brand recognition without actually taking on the risk.
So if it fails, he doesn't really lose anything.
I mean, it's pretty clever.
It is clever.
But also a bit cynical, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
It's a strategy that works remarkably well, though.
It does, yeah.
I mean, people are drawn to brands.
Yeah.
People are drawn to names that they recognize.
Names they recognize, yeah.
And Trump, he understands this. And he exploits it.
To his advantage, yeah.
To his advantage, yeah. But even with all this success, by the early 2000s, the shine of the Trump brand starts to kind of fade a little bit.
The shine comes off a little.
Yeah, the shine comes off.
Okay.
His casinos run into financial trouble. Some of his other ventures struggle. And even The Apprentice, which was such a hit, starts to see declining ratings.
Oh, interesting.
It seems like, maybe the magic was starting to wear off a little bit.
Maybe his time had passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, of course, comes this major turning point.
What's that?
A move that will completely reshape his trajectory and set him on this course toward the White House.
Okay.
The Apprentice becomes more than just a reality show.
Oh, okay.
It's his platform to kind of reassert his dominance, rebrand himself for a whole new audience.
Interesting.
And the premise of the show just plays perfectly into this image that he's been cultivating for decades.
Right. This, tough businessman image.
The tough, no-nonsense businessman.
Yeah.
Who makes decisive calls. You're fired.
Oh, yeah.
Becomes his catchphrase.
His catchphrase, yeah.
A symbol of this ruthless approach to business.
It's all about the bottom line.
And millions of Americans are tuning in every week, captivated by this very carefully constructed persona.
So in a way, The Apprentice was
It's like pre-campaigning.
Pre-campaigning, yeah.
Yeah.
And it gave him this whole new level of fame and recognition.
Right.
He became a household name for people who might not have even cared about, real estate.
Real estate or casinos or anything.
It broadened his audience.
It did, yeah.
Big time.
And then as his brand is being revitalized through The Apprentice, he starts to kind of test the political waters.
Okay.
He starts making these provocative statements, pushing the boundaries.
Pushing boundaries.
Of public discourse.
Right.
In 2008, he very publicly questions Barack Obama's citizenship, fueling the whole birther conspiracy theory.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, drew a lot of condemnation.
Yeah.
But it also gained him a lot of attention.
From a certain segment of the population?
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like he realized that he could really tap into like a deep well of discontent among a certain group of people.
And that realization really sets the stage for his very dramatic entrance onto the national political scene.
Which is a whole other story.
That
we're going to have to say for part 2.
Yes, but we will get there.
We'll get there.
Okay, so we left off with Trump kind of testing the waters in politics.
Right.
Riding high on the success of The Apprentice. And he was starting to, dabble in some pretty controversial rhetoric.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to say what he thought.
It's almost like he saw an opening, right?
Yeah.
A way to take his fame and his brand of unconventional thinking, let's call it that.
Yeah, his unique perspective.
And turn it into something bigger.
Something more
political. Yeah. Something more political for sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a sudden shift either.
No.
Like he'd been kind of flirting with this idea of running for office for years.
Yeah.
There were, these whispers of political aspirations going all the way back to like the 80s.
Really?
But it's really in the 2000s that it starts to kind of crystallize, the birther controversy, his growing frustration with, the political establishment. It all kind of seemed to fuel his ambition.
And this video, this Johnny Harris video, it includes this really revealing quote from Trump.
Oh, what's that?
About his presidential ambition.
Okay.
And he says, "I have so many rich friends and nobody knows who they are."
Wow. That's such a telling statement.
It is, isn't it?
It really gets to the heart of what drives him.
Yeah.
It's not about policy. It's not about ideology. It's about recognition.
It's about being the biggest name in the room.
Exactly. Like he wants to be the ultimate celebrity. Yeah. And what bigger stage is there than the presidency?
There's none.
Exactly.
It's the biggest stage in the world.
The whole world's watching.
Yeah.
So in 2015, he makes his move.
There you go.
Descending down the escalator.
An infamous escalator at Trump Tower.
I mean, talk about a spectacle.
Oh, yeah.
That image of him riding down that escalator with Melania at his side.
Yeah.
It's seared in our collective memory.
It's like a scene from a reality show.
It was, wasn't it?
It was like a masterclass in branding and showmanship.
Absolutely.
Like he immediately tapped into this, this deep well of discontent among a certain segment of the American population, people who felt ignored, by the political elite, yearning for simpler times, yeah.
And he did it all with this signature bravado, promising to make America great again.
That slogan was genius.
It was.
Simple, powerful, incredibly vague.
Yeah.
It allowed people to project their own hopes, their frustrations onto it.
And his campaign was anything but conventional, right?
No. He threw the rule book out.
Out the window.
He really did.
He relied heavily on these massive rallies.
Yes.
Filled with these passionate supporters who were just drawn to his, his fiery rhetoric and his, these attacks on the establishment.
He was like a rock star.
Yeah.
It was like a rock concert.
Totally.
He completely bypassed the traditional media outlets.
Oh, yeah. He didn't need them.
He
had Twitter. Direct connection to his base,
Controlling the narrative.
Launching these just blistering attacks on his opponents.
I mean, he weaponized social media.
Yeah.
In a way that no politician had ever done before.
And he wasn't afraid to say things that,
I would say anything.
It would have sunk any other candidate.
He made outrageous statements. He insulted his opponents.
Yeah.
He trafficked in conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
It was shocking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it was also incredibly effective.
He understood that outrage generates attention.
Yes.
And in our 24/7 news cycle, attention is everything.
And he also tapped into these existing anxieties.
Right.
About immigration, about trade, about globalization.
He channeled those fears into a very potent political force.
And he managed to do all of this while playing the role of the outsider.
Oh, yeah. The anti-establishment.
The anti-establishment candidate.
Who wasn't beholden to,
Special
interest, political correctness.
Which is ironic,
A little bit.
considering his wealth and his privilege.
Yeah, that is pretty ironic.
It's one of the most fascinating aspects of his appeal, you know?
I think so.
He managed to convince a large segment of the population that he was one of them.
Yeah, a man of the people.
The champion of the common person.
Even though his policies often benefited, you know?
The wealthy and the powerful.
Wealthy and the powerful, yeah.
Yeah. And then, against all odds,
he pulls it off.
He wins the 2016 election, defeating Hillary Clinton in a stunning upset.
It sent shockwaves through the political establishment.
No one saw it coming.
Nobody.
I mean, the pollsters...
The pundits, everyone was wrong.
Everyone was wrong.
And then came the presidency.
And let's be honest, it was a wild ride.
Turbulent is an understatement.
It really was.
Constant controversy, scandals, attacks on democratic norms.
He was governing by tweet, making these impulsive decisions.
Right, lashing out at anyone who dared to criticize him.
Surrounding himself with loyalists.
Purging anyone who questioned his authority.
Yeah.
Testing the limits of presidential power, you know?
Pushing the boundaries.
Pushing those boundaries, yeah.
Of the Constitution.
Right, right.
I mean, his policies were erratic.
Yeah.
Often shifting.
Based on his mood or the latest news cycle.
Yeah, exactly. It was all very reactive.
He alienated allies, cozied up to dictators, upending decades of established foreign policy.
I mean, it was exhausting. And at times, it felt genuinely dangerous.
And yet, through it all, he maintained this incredibly fervent base of support.
They loved him.
They did. They saw him as a fighter.
A disruptor.
Someone who was shaking things up, speaking his mind.
They loved his brash style.
Yeah.
His willingness to say, you know, what they were thinking. But maybe felt like they couldn't express.
And they dismissed, you know, any criticism of him as being part of this deep state conspiracy.
Yeah, fake news.
Fake news.
The enemy of the people.
Right, right. Yeah. It was a phenomenon that was fascinating.
Yeah.
But also deeply troubling.
It was very troubling.
And even after losing the 2020 election to Joe Biden,
he refused to concede defeat.
Right. He wouldn't admit it.
Spread all these baseless claims of voter fraud.
Incited his supporters to challenge the results.
Yeah.
Which culminated in the January 6th attack.
On the U.S. Capitol.
Dark day for American democracy.
It really was.
A stark reminder of how fragile our institutions really are.
Absolutely.
And even in the face of overwhelming evidence, he remained defiant.
Oh, yeah.
Unrepentant.
Never backed down.
He continued to hold rallies, to spread his message, you know, to maintain his grip on a significant portion of the American electorate.
And maybe most alarmingly, he continues to wield this immense influence within the Republican Party.
It's as if the party's become completely enthralled by him.
Yeah, it's really something.
Embracing his populism, nationalism, his disdain for democratic norms.
It's a transformation that has profound implications, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
For the future of American politics.
And as we stand here today, Trump is facing mounting legal troubles.
Multiple investigations.
Potential criminal charges.
But despite all of that, he remains
a formidable force.
A formidable force in American politics.
Yeah.
Teasing another presidential run and continuing to command the loyalty of millions.
It's a situation that leaves a lot of political analysts, you know, and observers just bewildered.
Bewildered and concerned.
Deeply concerned.
So to kind of sum it up, like, how did a man with no prior political experience, a man known for his, you know, his brash personality,
his questionable business dealings, how did he rise to the highest office in the land?
And more importantly, what does his continued influence say about the state of American democracy?
Those are questions that are going to be debated for years to come.
I think so.
For sure.
But to really understand the Trump phenomenon, I think we need to dig a little deeper.
Dig deeper, okay.
We need to examine the specific tactics and strategies that he employed throughout his whole career. The ones that allowed him to build his empire, cultivate his image, and ultimately capture the presidency.
It's like we're trying to decipher a code, trying to understand like the mechanics behind his success.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a big part of that code is understanding that Trump is a master of perception.
He knows how to shape the narrative. How to manipulate the media, how to tap into people's emotions.
He's playing a different game than traditional politicians.
He really is.
He's operating in this realm where reality often takes a backseat to the story you tell about it.
So let's try to break down this Trump playbook.
The playbook.
What are the key tactics
that
have made him so successful?
Hmm.
And some would argue so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen how Trump went from being just this real estate developer to, reality TV star, and then unbelievably the president of the United States.
It's a wild story.
But how? How did he do it?
Right.
Like, what are the tools that he uses that make him so effective?
Yeah.
Even when, a lot of people see through his tactics, right?
Well, I think one of the biggest factors is that he's a master of branding.
Branding.
He built this image of himself, as a winner,
right?
A deal maker, someone who always comes out on top.
We saw that early on in Manhattan, right?
Right from the beginning.
With those extravagant buildings, the constant media attention, the way he flaunted his wealth.
It all just kind of contributed to this aura of success,
Yeah, like I'm rich and therefore I must be smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And it's not even just about the money.
What else is it about?
It's about projecting this image of power and confidence, even if the reality might be different.
Even if it's not true.
Think back to that Forbes magazine story. He made up his net worth, and people believed him.
They did.
I mean, that's powerful stuff.
It's incredible. It really is.
And then there's the hyperbole. Right?
Oh, the hyperbole, yeah.
Everything with him is the best, the biggest, the most amazing,
He loves those superlatives.
He does, and he understands that, that grabs attention.
Yeah.
Even if those claims aren't grounded in reality,
right.
It's a way of kind of, overwhelming people's critical thinking, creating this sense of excitement and awe.
And it works.
It does.
Especially with audiences who are, maybe already predisposed to like him.
Right.
And then when he's faced with criticism or accusations, his go-to move is always deflection and denial.
Never taking responsibility, right?
Never his fault.
It's always a witch hunt, a conspiracy, fake news.
We saw this with the, the discrimination lawsuit, with all the scandals during his presidency. And of course with his refusal to accept the 2020 election results.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pattern.
It's a pattern.
And it's actually brilliant in a way.
It is.
Even if it's, super frustrating to watch. It allows him to maintain this image of strength, and infallibility among his supporters.
Right.
And it also sows doubt among people who maybe are on the fence about him.
We're wavering, yeah.
And it really often delays or derails any attempts at holding him accountable.
He just runs out the clock.
Yeah, by the time the truth catches up,
the news cycle has moved on.
People have forgotten.
And people are distracted by the next thing.
Exactly.
Another really key element of this Trump playbook, I think, is this mastery of division.
Oh, yeah. He's great at that.
He understands that a divided society is easier to control, right?
It's easier to manipulate.
So he intentionally stokes that conflict.
Pits groups against each other.
Yeah. He exploits those tensions.
Think about his rhetoric on immigration, race, the elites versus the forgotten men and women.
Right.
He creates this us versus them dynamic that makes it really hard for his opponents to kind of build these broad coalitions.
To fight back, yeah.
It's cynical, but it's effective.
It really is.
And then finally, I think there's his ability to tap into people's fears and anxieties.
Wow, he's great at that.
He is. He paints this picture of a world in decline, a country under threat.
And of course, he's the only one who can save us.
The only one, the savior.
He plays on economic anxieties, fears of social change, national security.
Yeah, anything that will get a rise out of people.
And for people who are feeling vulnerable or disillusioned, his message can be incredibly appealing.
Because he offers this sense of certainty in a world that feels very uncertain.
This sense of urgency, this need for a strong leader.
Yeah.
Someone who can protect them from all of these perceived threats.
And that's the genius of Trump.
Yeah.
He understands the power of emotion, storytelling, creating a narrative that just resonates with people on this gut level,
Whether or not it's actually based in reality.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't seem to matter.
Doesn't matter.
And what does all of this mean? What can we take away?
I think the big takeaway here is that we're living in this age where perception often matters more than reality.
Than the facts.
These traditional gatekeepers, information, the media, experts, institutions.
They've lost some of their influence.
They have.
People are bombarded with information from all sides.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know what to believe.
And in this kind of environment,
Yeah.
the people who are really skilled at manipulating emotion, at crafting these compelling narratives, at bypassing critical thinking, they have a huge advantage.
And Trump is a master of that.
He is a master of this new game.
Which raises some serious questions about, about the future of our democracy.
For sure.
Can a system that was designed for, reasoned debate and evidence-based decision-making, can it survive in an era where feelings often trump facts?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and it's one that we all need to grapple with.
We do, because the tactics that Trump has used, they're not unique to him.
No, they can be used by anyone.
They can be replicated, exploited by others who seek power and influence.
That's a scary thought.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the most important question we can ask is, how do we navigate this new information landscape?
How do we become more discerning consumers of information?
How do we resist, the allure of these emotional appeals and these simplistic narratives?
How do we hold our leaders accountable for their actions?
Big questions.
Big questions, and not easy ones to answer.
But they are essential.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Donald Trump.
It's been a wild ride.
It has been a wild ride.
It has.
And I hope you all come away with, some new insights, maybe even a few questions of your own.
Until next time, stay curious.
And stay engaged.
And thanks for listening.